My ex-wife left me with our toddlers, married a wannabe music producer, and then demanded I fund her stepdaughter's trip to New York after my kids earned spots at a prestigious music showcase. So I took them to court, and what happened broke her fantasy world. We met in Austin, on one of those summer nights when the heat hangs heavy and the bars spill live music onto the sidewalks. She was on stage at a grungy little open mic, barefoot with a tambourine, belting out an old Joni Mitchell song like it belonged to her. Melissa had this magnetic, chaotic energy, all curls and confidence, and I was just some guy nursing a shiner bock in the back row. But when our eyes met, it was like someone struck a chord deep in my chest. I approached her after the set, stumbled over some dumb line about her voice, and she actually laughed. We sat on the curb outside and talked until the bar closed. I learned she used to work weddings, but she really wanted to write her own music. I told her I coded for a living, but spent nights trying to learn John Mayer riffs he'd never get right. She said I had kind eyes. I said she looked like trouble. That was the start. The next year was a blur of vinyl store dates, late night songwriting, and way too many tacos. We were that couple, the ones who danced at bus stops and kissed in parking lots. We didn't talk about the future much, but when we did, it sounded like a playlist. House concerts, road trips, kids who'd fall asleep to lullabies we wrote ourselves. So we got married fast. 6 months in, City Hall, a cheap ring, and Melissa barefoot again, this time in a white sundress. We moved into a one-bedroom on the east side and made it work. Life was messy but beautiful. When Melissa told me she was pregnant, I cried. I'd never been more sure about anything. We turned the spare closet into a nursery and stayed up late debating baby names with old acoustic records playing in the background. Evan was born on a stormy October night. He came out wailing and perfect, all fists and fury. When the nurse handed him to me, he wrapped his tiny fingers around mine, and something in me cracked open. I was his. Totally. Completely his. From that day on, I woke up every morning with a new sense of purpose. The newborn months were chaos. I'd work during the day, come home, and take the night shift so Melissa could sleep. I learned to make bottles with one hand and change diapers in the dark. I'd walk the floor 4 hours humming lullabies until Evan finally passed out on my chest. There were moments when I'd just stand there in the quiet, holding him, thinking, this is what life is supposed to be. But something shifted. Melissa stopped playing music. She stopped smiling. She'd spend hours scrolling on her phone, eyes distant. At first, I thought it was postpartum blues. I tried to be patient. I cleaned, cooked, ran errands, made space for her to breathe. I even set up date nights, simple ones, like Thai takeout and a movie on the couch. But she always had an excuse. Too tired, not in the mood, maybe tomorrow. When Evan turned 1, Melissa found out she was pregnant again. It wasn't planned. She cried in the bathroom for an hour after the test. I held her, told her we'd figure it out. She didn't say anything, just nodded. Lily came into the world quietly, a small, fierce little thing with a singer's lungs and a fighter's spirit. I loved her the second I saw her. But Melissa, she kept drifting further away. She'd hand Lily off with a sigh, vanish into the bedroom, and emerge only to eat or scroll. There were nights I'd be doing dishes after putting both kids down, and catch her on the porch whispering into her phone. She always hung up fast when I walked outside, said it was her mom, or her friend Jessica, but her voice didn't sound like it used to. It was softer, more playful, like it had color again. The signs were all there. She started locking her phone, changing her passwords, hiding screens when I walked by. I wanted to trust her. God, I wanted to believe we were just tired parents drowning in diapers and bills. But the gut punch came one night when I went to plug in her charger. Her phone lit up with a message from a guy named Bryce. Can't stop thinking about last night. I stood there in the dark, phone still buzzing in my hand, with Lily crying faintly in the other room. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't even sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell we got here. Over the next few days, I watched her closely. The secret smiles, The constant texting, the sudden need to go for walks alone. It wasn't just in my head. When I finally brought it up, she didn't deny it. She just shrugged. I need something more, she said. I feel like I'm suffocating in this life. I asked if she was in love with him. She didn't answer, just walked away. 4 months later, I came home from work to find divorce papers on the kitchen table. No conversation, no warning, just a manila envelope with my name on it, and a cold silence behind her eyes. This isn't working, she said. You're a good dad, but we're not good together anymore. I wanted to scream, to beg, to throw a chair through the window. But then I saw Evan in the living room stacking blocks, and Lily asleep in her swing, and I knew whatever I did now would shape the rest of their lives. So I nodded. I signed. I moved out a week later with nothing but a mattress and a duffel bag. And that's how I started over. Alone, heartbroken, still singing lullabies at 2 a.m. But now in an empty apartment where silence echoed louder than Melissa's betrayal ever did. 16 months after the divorce was finalized, Melissa got remarried. No surprise. She'd been seeing Travis before our marriage even officially ended. I only found out through Evan. We were building Lego towers in my living room when he casually said, "Mom says Travis is moving in next week." I felt my stomach tighten, but I kept my tone light. "Who's Travis?" I asked. "Mom's friend," he said. "He plays music too. He's helping her record something. Helping her record something." Right. Travis was a self-proclaimed music producer. I say self-proclaimed because as far as I could tell, he hadn't produced anything except drama. He didn't have a studio, just a laptop and a few plugins. No clients, no income, just vibes and a SoundCloud account with 48 followers. But Melissa introduced him. He was Timbaland's long-lost cousin. The first time I met him was at Lily's pre-K art show. I was helping her hang up her crayon drawings when I turned around and there he was, skinny jeans, vintage band tee, and sunglasses indoors, like he was allergic to normal social interaction. "Hey, you must be the ex," he said with a smirk, sticking out a hand. "I'm Travis. Heard a lot about you." I shook his hand, keeping it brief. "I'm sure you have." From that day on, he was everywhere. At school pickups, birthday parties, swim lessons, always hovering like he was the main character. But what really hit me in the gut was the day Evan came home and said, "Dad, can I call him Dad Travis? Mom says it's respectful." I froze. "You already have a dad, bud." "Me? I know," Evan said, looking uncomfortable. "She said I can have 2 dads now." I didn't want to put the kids in the middle. I didn't want to cause drama. But every bone in my body screamed that something wasn't right. I bit my tongue, took a breath, and said, "You can call him whatever makes you comfortable. But just remember, he'll always be your dad." That wasn't the end of it. Melissa started weaving this narrative that we were all one big blended family that included Travis' daughter, Aria, a shy, sweet little girl who was around Lily's age. I had nothing against her, but she wasn't my child, and yet Melissa expected me to treat her exactly the same. "Don't you think it's hurtful when you bring Evan and Lily presents but leave Aria out?" She texted one weekend after I dropped the kids off. "I'm their father," I replied. "That's my role. Aria has 2 parents." Her response came fast. "So you're okay alienating a child just because she's not biologically yours?" I didn't respond. There was no winning that conversation. Then came the real manipulation. Melissa started suggesting I should include Aria in our weekend plans. "It's confusing for them when you only take 2, she said. "They're siblings now. They're close, and I'm happy about that," I replied. "But my time with Evan and Lily is limited. I want to focus on them." "Wow," she wrote back. "Way to exclude a little girl. Real mature." Travis got in on it too. At every school event, he'd make these smug comments about our trio, and how co-parenting should be about love, not biology. He'd strut around like the kids were awards he'd won. Once, during a school assembly, he leaned over and said, "You know, it's really important that we present a united front. Aria sees you as part of the family now." I turned to him, smiled politely, and said, I'm Evan and Lily's father. That's the front I present. He didn't like that. The pressure kept building. Melissa started emailing me co-parenting articles about inclusivity and blended families. She quoted experts. She even had Aria make me a Father's Day card, which, again, would have been sweet if it hadn't come with a passive-aggressive note from Melissa. See how much she looks up to you. Maybe next year include her in your plans here. The final straw came when Evan told me that Travis had started introducing them to his friends as his kids. He said we're his kids now too, Evan said quietly, not making eye contact. He says real families don't draw lines. I could feel my blood pressure spike, but I kept my voice steady. You know who your parents are. That's what matters. Yeah, Evan said. I just didn't want to make anyone mad. That sentence shattered me more than anything else had. My son was walking on eggshells, afraid to upset adults who were supposed to protect him. I realized then that this whole blended family charade wasn't about unity. It was about control. Melissa didn't want co-parenting. She wanted ownership of the narrative, of the kids' loyalty, of my role. And Travis, he just wanted the image. The perfect artist dad with the ready-made family. A discount fairy tale. I kept showing up. Kept being the dad who listened, who helped with homework, who made pancakes on Saturday mornings. I didn't badmouth them. I didn't argue in front of the kids. But inside, the tension was building. The slow, constant erosion of boundaries. The guilt trips, the passive aggression, the weaponized kindness. They were playing a long game. What they didn't know, so was I. It started with a piano recital at the end of 3rd grade. Evan sat at the baby grand in his tiny boaty, hands trembling just a little above the keys. Then he played Bach, with confidence, with feeling. I watched his fingers dance over those keys, and I knew something had shifted. This wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a calling. The room was silent when he finished. Then the applause came like a wave. A week later, he took first place in the statewide youth piano competition. 2 weeks after that, Lily, 7 years old, big lungs and a bigger heart, performed a solo at her school's spring concert. It was a simple folk melody, but the way she sang it, raw and wide open, stopped the entire auditorium. Someone filmed it on their phone. By morning, it had 40,000 views on Facebook. The little girl with the grown-up soul. The caption read, "That video and Evan's win caught the attention of someone at the National Youth Arts Showcase, an elite performance program held annually in New York City. 30 kids from around the country were selected. Just 30. Both of mine made it. I still remember the day the acceptance emails came in. We were at my place after dinner. The kids asked if they could check the inbox together. Evan clicked, read the email once, then again, then shouted so loud, I'm pretty sure my upstairs neighbor dropped something. Lily jumped off the couch, screaming with him. I picked them both up and spun around until I got dizzy. This wasn't just a chance for them to shine. It was proof that all the sacrifices meant something. The late night practice sessions, the competitions, the skipped vacations, the old car I'd been driving since before the divorce. It'd been saving for something like this, and when the time came, I didn't blink. The tuition, flights, hotel, coaching sessions, gear, all in, it was close to $18,000. I paid it in full without hesitation. They earned it. This was their shot. I emailed Melissa that night with the details. I figured she'd be excited. I figured, maybe for once, she'd share in the pride. I was wrong. Her reply came 3 hours later. What about Aria? I stared at the screen. Reread it. What about Aria? I responded. What about her? She'll feel excluded. Melissa wrote, you can't send Evan and Lily to something this big and leave her behind. It's not fair. I stared at that message for a full minute. Aria hadn't even auditioned. She wasn't accepted. She wasn't involved. This wasn't about fairness. This was about ego. About optics. About Melissa and Travis wanting their fantasy family narrative to be preserved at any cost. I responded calmly. Evan and Lily were selected based on talent. Aria wasn't. I'm not going to exclude my children from something they earned. Melissa didn't back down. She's part of their family. She's their sister. This will hurt her. Do you really want her to feel like a second-class citizen? I couldn't believe it. This isn't a family vacation. It's a national showcase. My kids were chosen because they worked their asses off. She escalated fast. If Aria doesn't go, maybe none of them should. They'll feel guilty going without her. I think it's a mistake. I felt my blood boil. She was really threatening to sabotage our kids' dreams because her stepdaughter wasn't invited. Because reality didn't match the little Pinterest blended family illusion she was trying to sell. I replied, "This isn't about Aria, and it's not up for discussion." She hit back with, "Then don't be surprised if they change their minds." The next night, Evan called me in tears. "Mom said it's not right to go if Aria can't," he said. "She said we're a team." I had to pause, take a breath. "Buddy, listen. You and Lily earned this. No one can take that from you. You're not doing anything wrong. But I don't want Aria to feel bad," he said, sniffling. "I like her. I know you do. That makes you a good brother. But being a good brother doesn't mean giving up something you worked hard for. This is your moment." He was quiet for a long time. "Do you think Mom's mad at me?" "No," I said. "I think Mom's confused about what fairness really means." After that call, I texted Melissa, "Don't put this on them. Don't guilt our children for achieving something incredible." Her response, a thumbs down emoji. That weekend, when I dropped the kids off, Travis opened the door, smiling. "Heard about the big news," he said. "Quite the opportunity. Shame Aria can't go. Guess some people think art should be exclusive." I didn't answer, just called for Evan and Lily and walked them to the car. In the rearview mirror, I could see Evan looking unsure, like he was already carrying guilt he shouldn't be carrying. Melissa was using my kids to fight her insecurities, and something in me, something quiet and buried for a long time, finally started to rise. I was done playing along with their fantasy, because this wasn't about Aria, it was about control. Friday afternoon, just before a big client call, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender, Travis Ellis. The subject line, shared household support proposal. I opened it, thinking it had something to do with the kids' schedule. It was a spreadsheet, a color-coded, formula-driven, itemized breakdown of their household expenses, rent, groceries, utilities, streaming subscriptions, everything. The total came to just under $2,400 a month. At the bottom, bolded and underlined, Jordan's suggested contribution, $1,215 a month. Next to that, a note in italics, to ensure equity between homes and minimize disruption to the children's psychological development. I sat there staring at the screen, the goal of it literally making me forget how to breathe. Attached was a second document, a letter from both Melissa and Travis, explaining how my nicer home was causing the children to feel environmental imbalance, and how my financial stability created an unfair standard in their shared family narrative. I didn't even finish reading it. I just stood up, walked out of my office, and into the hallway like he'd been slapped across the face. It wasn't just the audacity, it was the arrogance, the sheer delusion. This man, who lived off my ex-wife's income and pretended to be a music mogul because he once engineered a podcast intro, was asking me to subsidize his rent because I dared to work hard enough to buy a modest house in a quiet neighborhood for my kids. It'd taken every jab, every manipulation, every forced smile at pickup. But this was the final straw. That night, after I put Evan and Lily to bed, I opened a new browser tab and typed in the name of a top-tier family law attorney in Austin, one he'd bookmarked over a year ago, but never contacted. I sent the message, "Hi, I'm ready to move forward." The next day, I called Marcus, my best friend and a digital security consultant, and asked him for help compiling everything. "It's time," I told him. "I'm done playing defense." He didn't even ask what happened. "Say no more," he said. We got to work. I pulled every text from Melissa over the last 2 years. The guilt trips, the gaslighting, the passive-aggressive digs. Every email where she tried to force Aria into my plans. Every response I gave that showed restraint, responsibility, and clarity. Marcus set up recovery tools and started digging through old iCloud backups, helping me retrieve deleted conversations and timestamps that painted a very different picture from the one they'd been selling. He helped me install a discreet dash cam in my car with audio, legal in Texas, since it's a one-party consent state. That camera paid off within a week. I was dropping the kids off when Travis leaned into the window to grab a forgotten backpack. The mic caught everything. "You know, your dad's got it easy," he said to Evan, in a voice too sweet to be sincere. "He only has to play fun parent while we do the real work. Sometimes I think he forgets we're the ones stuck with you half the time." I watched the footage that night 3 times in a row, fists clenched. That man looked my son in the face and called him a burden. The next blow came via text from Evan himself. "Dad, can I come over tomorrow instead of Friday? Mom and Travis are fighting again. It's about money. Travis said you should man up and help since they're stuck with your kids half the time." I stared at the message until my phone dimmed. Then I took a screenshot and sent it to my lawyer. We weren't just talking about manipulation anymore. This was emotional abuse, veiled as co-parenting, and now it was leaking into my children's minds, poisoning their sense of worth, their sense of safety. I started documenting everything. I kept a written log of every drop-off, every weird comment, every time Lily said "Mom's mad, we had fun at your house," or Evan looked down when talking about his school recital because Travis said he wouldn't have time for another amateur kid show. I pulled out receipts, literal ones, for piano lessons, vocal coaching, sheet music, recital outfits. I logged every dollar spent on tutoring, therapy, birthday parties, and school trips. The evidence built itself. Meanwhile, Melissa and Travis acted like nothing was happening, still posting on social media about our perfect little artist crew and their modern love story, with filtered pictures of Aria playing ukulele next to Lily and Evan, captioned "One team, one dream." But behind the scenes, my kids were cracking. Evan became quiet during our weekends. Lily started asking if it was okay to talk about camp in front of Aria. I could feel their joy dimming. One night, Evan sat next to me on the couch after dinner, clutching his sheet music. Travis said music's not a career. He said, "I need a backup plan." I paused the TV, turned to him. "Evan, your talent is real. Your passion is real. Don't let someone else's failure become your future." He nodded. I still on the floor. "I just don't want to cause problems." That was it. This wasn't just about rent, or camp, or Aria. It was about protecting my children's sense of identity, of safety, of family. I couldn't let them grow up believing that love meant guilt, or that boundaries meant punishment. I filed the paperwork the next morning. Custody modification, requesting 70/30th split. All communication to go through a court-monitored parenting app. No unsupervised contact between Travis and the kids during transition periods. Formal documentation of all financial contributions submitted with the petition. I didn't warn Melissa. I didn't argue. I just let the paperwork do the talking. Because the moment Evan texted me for refuge, the game changed. I wasn't just fighting for weekends anymore. I was fighting for their peace. And I was ready. 6 weeks after filing the motion, we were in court. Melissa sat to my left at the front table, in a pale blazer, like she was auditioning for a sympathy campaign. Travis was next to her, flipping through a manila folder like he had any business being involved. I didn't look at either of them. My lawyer, Julia, had already warned me, "Stay calm, don't react, let the evidence speak." So I stared straight ahead, hands folded, trying to ignore the fact that I was shaking slightly under the table. The hearing began with Melissa's attorney resenting her case, that I was creating emotional instability by refusing to acknowledge the realities of the blended family dynamic, that my behavior, namely excluding Aria from trips, gifts, and activities, was causing distress among the children, damaging their sibling bond, and creating an emotional divide that bordered on neglect. Then Melissa spoke. She used all the right buzzwords: unity, inclusion, safety. She painted herself as a mother just trying to keep her family together, while her ex-husband undermined her efforts by playing favorites. He refuses to even acknowledge Aria in front of the kids, she said, voice quivering. He makes her feel invisible. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue she didn't need. Then she turned to the judge and said, "I believe Hayes punishing us for moving on, and our children are suffering because of it." I sat there in silence. I didn't flinch. I didn't roll my eyes. I just waited, because I knew what was coming next. When it was our turn, Julia stood and methodically laid everything out, calm, confident, surgical. She submitted a stack of receipts, tutoring bills, music lessons, competition fees, therapy invoices, proof that it not only financially supported my children, but gone above and beyond. Then came the logs, a full binder detailing every visit, every hour spent with Evan and Lily, every text message where I'd asked Melissa to collaborate, every time I offered compromise, every time she shut it down or redirected the conversation to Aria. Then came the recordings. We played the clip of Travis leaning into my car, calling Evan a burden. You could feel the air leave the room. The judge leaned forward slightly. Melissa's smile faltered. Travis shifted in his seat, suddenly very interested in the scuffs on the courtroom floor. Julia closed with a simple statement. My client is not refusing to acknowledge Aria. Hayes refusing to allow emotional manipulation under the guise of inclusivity. He has upheld every responsibility to his children. What Hayes being asked to do now is fund and emotionally parent a child that is not his, at the expense of his own. Then it was quiet. The judge looked over the files, the messages, the calendar logs, the payment history. Then he finally looked at Melissa. "Ms. Carter," he said slowly, "you've presented no evidence that Mr. Hayes has failed in his duties as a father. What I see is a co-parent fulfilling his role with consistency, generosity, and involvement." Melissa opened her mouth, but the judge raised a hand. Furthermore, expecting a non-parent to financially and emotionally support a child not in his custody, without consent or legal standing, is inappropriate. The court will not enforce blended family dynamics that are being used as leverage. He turned to me. "Mr. Hayes, your request is granted. Final ruling, minus 70/30ths custody split. In Jordan's favor, all future communication via court-monitored app. Melissa and Travis to pay all legal fees associated with the motion." I exhaled. A full breath I didn't know I'd been holding for the past year. Melissa looked stunned, blinking like someone had pulled the rug out from under her carefully crafted version of reality. Travis' face was stone. No smirk, no clever remark, just the slow realization that the game was over. As I stood and gathered my things, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free, not because I won in court, but because I finally stopped letting them rewrite the rules of what love, parenting, and responsibility look like. I didn't need a trophy. I had something better. My kids, my peace, my voice. If this story hit you right in the gut, or made you want to high-five Jordan through the screen, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Open Secret Stories. Tomorrow, we're dropping another true story that'll leave your jaw on the floor. You won't want to miss it.